We're going to talk about the soil surface classification system. It's a way that we can use features of the soil to come up with a measure of how functional or healthy the soil is. So there are 13 attributes which I'd like to go through very quickly. The first attribute is soil surface roughness. Imagine it's how rough it is. A really rough surface is great for catching water and seeds. The second thing is crust resistance. It's how resistant the crust is to penetration through the surface. And the more resistant, the less likely it is to erode. How broken is the soil? That's our third classification, part of the classification. And that gives us an indication of niches or patches for seeds to collect. Obviously, the stability of the crust is important. That's our fourth attribute. And we do that by putting a little piece of soil into a petri dish and seeing how well it maintains its structural integrity. Biocrust cover is the fifth attribute. That's the cover of organisms like mosses, lichens, liverworts and things like that. The next one is erosion. Is this quadrat eroded or not? Well, we've probably got about 40% erosion because we're quite close to water, which brings us to the next category, and that's deposited material. And you can see here that this red material, this sand, is actually washed down through, across the soil. That gives us an indication of some level of erosion in the past. Plant foliage cover, the cover looking from above, and the basal cover, the actual cover of the butts, is also critically important because the more cover that you have, the more resistant to erosion you have. Then we look at litter, and we look at four attributes. The cover of litter, and litter, this is detached plant material. It's about 30% cover. We look at the depth, a couple of millimeters. A deep litter is more important for microbial communities and invertebrates. We look at the origin. Has it originated from this quadrat or has it blown in? And that's going to affect the score that we give it. And probably the most important about litter is how incorporated it is. In other words, can I separate the litter from the surface, or are they all mixed in like compost? When it's all mixed in, it's really, really high quality. We then are interested finally in some measure of grazing, and we do that by counting the number of pieces of dung in the quadrat. Here we have kangaroo dung, these large pieces of dung. That gives us a measure of grazing by kangaroos, and of course the dung from sheep and goats, much smaller pellets. Okay. When we look at all these attributes, we can give them a score and we can come up with a number that gives us a measure of how functional this soil is.